And with me now is Kory Teneycke, co-founder and CEO of Rubicon Strategy, and he led Doug Ford's successful re-election campaign in Ontario. Kory, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, let me start by asking you about the federal Liberals. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne says no spring budget, instead a fall economic update. And here's what he had to say on Power Play last night with Vassy Kapelos. Let's listen.
It just makes sense to ask, to do the first thing first, which is to have the back of Canadians. So for me, putting all our efforts to pass this tax breaks for Canadians, for me, it's priority number one. Because folks who are watching at home, I said, give me the tax break that I need now. This is what I've been asking. This is what we campaign on. And that's what we got a mandate from Canadians to deliver. And that's, we say, the first order of business. Of all the things that this new government, Carney, could do, the first thing we do for Canadians is to give them a tax break.
Okay, so Kory, after hearing all of that, what do you think? Budget, or is a fall economic statement enough? What do Canadians deserve?
Well, I think a lot of people, myself included, are pretty surprised to hear that we're not going to be having a budget. I don't think there's a good rationale in Minister Champagne's comments there for why you wouldn't do a budget. Sure, I think Canadians will all appreciate a tax cut. I think taxes are too high in Canada, and I think a lot of Canadians would agree with that. But why not show the costing of it? Why not show what you expect to happen with government revenues, et cetera? I'm quite surprised that they would choose not to have a budget. In terms of what Poilievre had to say, I think striking a much more positive tone than we've heard from him in the past. And I'm a little surprised at that, too, but pleasantly surprised, I must say.
Do you agree with Poilievre's comments that no budget sends a bad message to investors?
Well, I'm not sure whether investors are really going to be fixated on that, but I think it sends a bad message to Canadians writ large that the government isn't doing what I think is just viewed as absolutely normal and an essential thing that governments do, which is to project what they're spending and what the revenues are going to be. Especially for a prime minister like Carney, whose reputation is as a central banker and somebody who was elected, on the assumption that he would be a strong fiscal manager. I think not having a budget is running counter to that brand and those assumptions that Canadians had about him.
Now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also mentioning that he wants Carney to keep stealing the Conservatives' best ideas. Your thoughts on that comment?
Well, I think if you're looking at the election campaign, a lot of the ideas came, straight out of Poilievre's platform around resource corridors, around the tax cut that you saw Champagne talking about in the clip that you played. Those are all things that were Poilievre things. I think some of the criminal justice reform elements as well around bail reform are very closely associated with the Conservatives and the complaints that they had about the Trudeau government. So, look, I think it's good for Canadians, in my view, to see some of those ideas that the Conservatives have been advocating for picked up by the Liberals and implemented. But what I think is more surprising is the tone of Poilievre and his openness to have that happen. If we look at what was happening during the campaign, he was casting shade on the Liberals' attempt to take some of those ideas, which is understandable in the context of an election campaign. But and the narrative going into the campaign had been one of Canada being broken. Now, what we just heard from him is much more optimistic and constructive. I think it's the kind of thing that's going to help improve his leadership numbers if he can keep it up, which is clearly one of the problems that the Conservatives had in the election campaign. Poilievre being too negative and Canadians having a more negative view of him as a choice for prime minister than Carney.
You mentioned the tax cut, the Liberals' priority middle-class tax cut. Do you see Pierre Poilievre supporting this in the House in order to help get it passed?
I would be surprised if the Conservatives opposed a tax cut, but that said, as the opposition, they have a constitutional duty to oppose the government on most things. Whether they would on that one or not, I don't know. I haven't spoken to them to have any indication as to which way they would choose. But there's certainly an argument for supporting a tax cut. It's a very popular measure. But supporting a tax cut absent a budget that shows how you're going to pay for that tax cut, that might be a bridge too far, and you might see them default to that constitutional duty to oppose.
Interesting point there. We'll have to leave it right there. Kory, thank you very much for your time. Kory Teneycke is the co-founder and CEO of Rubicon Strategy and former campaign manager for Doug Ford's 2018 campaign.